Hey, first I want to thank Professor Nickerson for inviting me in. I've been lucky enough to come into a number of Professor N's classes over the years. And of course, getting a chance to talk about my favorite subject, which of course is data. Um, and I know I've spoken to Professor a couple of times about the projects that you're going to be working on. And I think data is going to come in very handy because quite frankly, without data, you know, a lot of what you're going to do would be just kind of throwing spaghetti up against the wall. So data, I'm a big believer in data. I'm going to talk a little bit about my personal experience. I'm going to talk a little bit about SBRnet, and then we're going to talk a little bit about a specific scenario and talk a little bit through, how you use data. I just want to let you know a couple of things. Number one, I can't see anybody. Is there any way possible how many people were in the classroom, Professor?
We have 20. So give me a second. I can join on my.
Even if you could turn your laptop around or something, that would be great to be able to see people. Just because I can't call on anybody if I can't see you. So you might be lucky that way.
Professor Geisler called IT when we were in this class last week, and they couldn't change the camera.
Oh, okay. That's what I was thinking. So I was gonna get my laptop going, at least give you a sense of that I'm not just by myself, Neil. So give me a second while we connect. So this is the first day we've had the room.
Okay. I mean, I can start.
Yeah. Go ahead and start. And if any questions,
Sure.
I'll make sure that they speak up.
So as Professor Nickerson said, I'm Neil Schwartz and I'm president of SBRnet. SBRnet stands for Sports Business Research Network, and we are one of the dominant research companies providing data focused on sports fans. It's what we do. We've been doing it for a number of years. We've got a lot of great data. We cover data on 19 separate sports. Actually, this year, we're going to count it as 20 because we've added a number of, let's just say, new women's sports, or we've added some women's sports into the mix that we've not really looked at before. But what we're going to be talking about today is really how to use data to drive strategy and decision-making for various marketing, sports management applications. Today's topic specifically is going to be how to use data to grow fan base. How can you use data in order to grow fan base? And we're going to focus, frankly, on, I did have a choice. It was either the New York Rangers or DC United. I opted for DC United because, frankly, I can't stand the Rangers. I grew up in Philadelphia, and I have a genetic predisposition to not liking any of the New York sports teams. It's kind of funny because I've been married more than once, and in all cases, I've married women from New York. But when it comes to sports teams, I am not rooting for any of the New York teams. I can tell you that much. But we're going to talk a little bit about data. And let me just tell you real quickly, you're going to get a lot of energy. Hopefully, you'll get a lot of enthusiasm. Hopefully, you'll pick up a few ideas along the way. But, the reason why I love the sports business, it just comes down to three words. And hopefully it's going to be the same three words that will drive you if you are planning to go into the sports business, because there's so many different ways. There's so many different opportunities. There's so many different places, brands, teams, retail, sports, tourism, so many different ways. But the one thing that holds that all together is sports are fun. Whether you're on the losing end or winning end, sports are fun. And I love talking about sports. And that's why hopefully tonight I'll bring some enthusiasm. Again, I wish I could see everybody because I'd be calling them left and right. So right now you should be happy that, right now it's all about that. It's all about, listening. Okay. And we are recording, so I'm really excited about that. So what I'd like to do is start off a little bit, again, telling you a little bit about SBRnet, because we're going to be using data from my company today. I'm going to tell you a little bit about me. I'm going to show you where to access the data that you're going to need on Sports Market Analytics. Sports Market Analytics is the name of the platform that we use, or that we we've branded. SBRnet's the name of the company. Sports Market Analytics is the name of the platform. We're going to talk a little bit about process. And funny thing, I'm a process guy. And I know sometimes people find that hard to believe, but I really believe in process. I believe in a plan. I believe in a strategy. I believe in all of those things. But in order to drive that, you need a process. So we're going to talk a little bit about process today. We're going to talk about the objectives that drive the data choices that you're going to be making. Why use this data? Why choose that data point over this data point? And hopefully that's one of the things that we're going to get to. And then we're going to try to put the data into specific use, because that's really what this is all about. Again, a little bit about me. I have been in the sports business for, God, I can't believe I'm going to actually say this, over 25 years. It just seems like impossible to me. I've owned SBRnet for 5 years. I've been lucky enough to deal really in all areas of the sports business: teams, leagues, national governing bodies, brands, retail, the financial side of the business, advertising. I'm missing something somewhere along the line. But again, I've been in all aspects of the business, and I love the opportunity to bring my experience, bring the things that I've learned. But most important, I like to talk about how to bring data into your world, because data is going to be something that's going to be universal to everyone. When you get that first job out there, or if you're already working, your boss is going to come up to you and say, put this data together for me and tell me, tell me what it's telling us, what we should be doing, what we're not doing, all of those different things. Oh, hi, Professor.
What are you doing?
So SBRnet, my company, we feature data focused in 3 major areas. Sports fans, as I talked about, 19 sports, we're going to be 20 this year. My data doesn't actually come out until, oh, hello there. Now you're all in trouble.
There you go.
Now you're all in big trouble. Especially a young lady right in front in the green sweater. Hi, what's your name?
Julia.
Hi, Julia. I'm going to warn you now. I'm probably going to call on you. So just, I'm afraid you're not going to be able to hide. How about the gentleman next to you with the blue hoodie on? Or is that black? I can't really tell from here. Other side. All right,
Yeah.
what's your name?
Ahmad. Nice to meet
Hey,
you.
how are you tonight?
I'm good. I'm a fellow Rangers fan, by the way.
Oh boy, I had nothing I can say about your choice of fans. I am not a Rangers fan, trust me, or an Islanders fan, or a Giants, or a Jets, or Knicks, or it's all the New York teams. So again, we're going to talk a little bit about sports fans, 19 sports, professional, college, minor league. But most importantly, we're going to talk a little bit about the 65 categories of data that we ask. And I'm going to talk a little bit about our methodology and how we do what we do. We also collect data on sports participation. Now, that data is data I don't make. We actually buy it. But we'll talk a little bit, probably not even get into it too much. And then we also have data on apparel, footwear, and equipment for sport. So, what I'd like you to understand is that we really cover the industry from, what I consider the major perspectives: fans, participation, purchase. And I can get into a lot of the different philosophies. Just some, we're going to be working mostly with fan data tonight. The fan data, I don't know if you can read this or not. Do I need to make it a little bigger, or is it okay? We okay with this?
Can you read it, or do you
Maria,
want
can you read it?
maybe a little bit bigger if you can?
Okay, I can. How's that? A little better?
He can't hear you. A little
Can't
bigger.
hear me. Seriously, is that a little better?
Were you
You
able to
can't hear me, or you can hear me?
I can hear you. Can you make it?
Okay.
Here, please?
Okay, he was just,
Wait, hold on.
what is he doing over there? Ah,
Okay, get rid of this bar. No.
it's
All right.
bad enough I have to deal with me.
You're more than welcome to stand up and come look.
I'm fine right where I am. So the data that we're working with is SBRnet, our sports fan data. I want to let you know a little bit about the methodology. I'm a big believer in making sure that you understand where the data comes from that we're going to be using, because I can tell you there is nothing worse than standing in front of a group of people and you showing data, you showing some information, you have a great, presentation, and somebody says, hey, where'd that data come from? And you can't answer the question. You might as well just sit down, because everything you said before that, is basically just going to be done with, because data is really important. So we do every year, in fact, we're doing it right now, a consumer survey. It's being done in January among a representative panel of U.S. consumers ages 13 and above. We don't go below the age of 13. Last year, we interviewed a total of 6,000. I swear I didn't pick this number out. 6,666 respondents. I already told my research company that does this work for me, I said, you cannot land on 6666 again, no matter what. I don't care if you have to talk to one more person. But each respondent reports their information on attendance, viewerships, along with 65 other categories. Things like licensed merchandise sales. So are you buying licensed merch? Gambling. Do you gamble on sports? Hey, just out of curiosity, and I swear I don't know any of your parents, or I swear I won't rat you out. How many of you have gambled on sports or do gamble on sports? I'm going to raise my hand because I do. Anybody else want to? Okay, that's cool. Look, sports gambling right now is one of the hottest categories that people are talking about. Aside from women's sports, right now I get more people inquiring and talking to me about gambling on sports. But again, what we're doing is we're looking backwards at the previous 12-month behavior to understand fandom. What goes into fandom? TV viewing, streaming, gambling, sports tourism, licensed merch sales. God, I can go on and on here. There's just a ton of data. But the data that we all collect is based on, again, U.S. households. And we interview people ages 13 and above. And what we do is we do what they call a nationally representative, or for short, NatRep sample, using geographic region, income, household size, age, gender, race, and ethnicity. So what do? We balance the collection to look like the United States based on those parameters. So our goal is to collect what they call, again, a nationally representative sample. And it's important to understand that. It's like building a bridge. Okay, when you build a bridge, what do architects do first? I'll just answer my own question. They build a model. Hey, we're going to build a model of the bridge because we want to see how the bridge, once it's full size, is going to look, is going to, engineering, all that. We do our data the same exact way. We build a model and then we fill the model. So each respondent gives us information, again, on 65 categories. It is based on a total U.S. population, again, of 282.5 million persons ages 13 and older. And we define, by the way, a sports fan as somebody who has either watched one game via traditional TV or streaming or attended a game. Who here watched some football over the past weekend? Just by show of hands. Almost everyone. Anybody go to a football game? Anybody go to a playoff game or anything? Anybody go to the Commanders game? Cool. I was really impressed. I have to say that the Commanders, really were spectacular. And I think they've got a good chance against the Eagles. I am from Philadelphia. I do root for the Eagles, but I love the underdog. Again, 19 sports, 65 categories of data in all of the categories that you're currently seeing on the screen. So we really get a wide view. Whoops, didn't want to go there. A wide view of what goes into making up a sports fan. And really, it's just all of these things. It's attendance, it's gambling, it's licensed merch, fantasy. How many of you play some sort of fantasy league? I got to raise my hand on that one too. I'm in a goofy golf fantasy league. I didn't do football this year, but I did do golf. I'm in golf. But again, all of these behaviors are what goes in to being a sports fan. But remember, early on, I talked a little bit about process. I am a process guy. Let me get a little drink here. The reason why I'm a process guy is that it helps me stay organized. Because when you're working with data, it is really easy to get disorganized and end up all over the place. And believe me, I've been all over the place. So I like to use this little model with the funnel. The reason why I like the funnel is because in the very beginning, I like to dump as much data and information as I can in the top of the funnel. Even if it seems irrelevant, I'm dumping it in there. And what I'm hoping is that the data that I need or the data that I want or the data that I'm going to need is going to drop down through the little note, through the bottom of the funnel. And that's what I'm going to work with. That's the data that I'm going to need. That's how I'm going to organize my process. I'm going to show you a little bit about something else I do. But I also put these words up here. Have any of you ever heard of a SWOT analysis before? Julie, I see you shaking your head. I'd ask you what it stands for, but it's right up on the screen. Have you ever done a SWOT analysis? What was the product or service, or what was it on?
For the SWOT analysis I did was on, for a class project on a destination.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you find that it helped you to organize your thinking and really helped to kind of set you off in the right direction early?
Yes, especially it was a destination marketing class. So
Sure.
we had to look at, especially like the opportunities and threats and how we could better market that destination. So it was definitely helpful for a good background analysis.
It's funny too, I'm a parent and I find myself saying things like, talking about algebra. Oh yeah, I use algebra every day. That's pretty much a bunch of crap. But I use a lot of things that I've learned in school over the years. And one of the things I learned way back when I went to Syracuse and I took early marketing classes was about the SWOT analysis. And guess what? I graduated. Oh, I don't even want to say when I graduated, but I'm still using it. So, I mean, the things you are learning are things you will use. Now, let's talk a little bit about growing a business. One of the things I've learned very early on, both as an entrepreneur, business owner, as well as somebody who advises businesses, that there really are only 3 ways a business can grow. Only 3. And it really keeps things simple. I'm a businessman. There's only 3 ways I'm going to grow my business. You're a team. We're going to talk a little bit about the team because the team is a little bit different, a little nuanced. But again, growing a business, 3 ways to grow: customers and revenue. I'm going to tell you, buying up other companies and raising prices does not count because you can always raise prices. You can always buy another company. That doesn't count in this. It's how do I grow my business from, let's call it, the status quo, not gaining incremental, buying an incremental company. But one way that I grow my business is I can add products and services to my existing business model or my existing selection model. I give people something else to buy from me. I did that this year, by the way. I added brand new global sales data so that now schools like GW, brands, other folks are able to buy global sales data from me that we weren't able to get them before because I didn't have it, frankly. But once I have those new products and services that I add to my existing business model, I can sell more products and services to my existing customer base. You know your customers. I have 262 of them. I know my customers. I have their email addresses. I have their contact information. I have all the information I need to go back to them to sell more products and services. So we know our customer base. We're going to relate this, by the way, to teams and fans. But the other way is to steal customers from your competition. Now, I have to tell you, that's the hardest of the 3 because you've got to identify who those customers are and how different that might be from your customers. You've got to really understand what motivates and what drives them, and then develop a strategy focused on that. Stealing customers from your competition, while a viable way to grow your business, is not the easiest. It's just not. But we're going to talk about that today because we're going to focus on DC United. And we're going to talk a little bit about soccer. Who here is a soccer fan, just in general? Has anybody gone to a DC United game in the room there? That's cool. Do you watch them on television, streaming, any of that kind of thing? You want to raise a hand again? No? All right.
No.
It's okay. No
I'm
problem.
not surprised. The data shows that.
Well, then, there's students, they don't have much time to watch TV, But again, there's only three ways, though, that a team can grow its fan base, because that's what we're going to talk about today. And, this is a really fun project, in my opinion, because what's going to happen is that we're going to give you the three ways that you can use, and we're going to demonstrate how data fits in to that specific model of using data to grow your fan base. But again, I want to give you a little bit of a disclaimer. Winning and acquiring new players, that's always a great way to increase your fan base. But in this case, those things are out of your control. None of you are the general managers of the DC United MLS team. So you can't control how many games they win, how many games they lose, or if they acquire a new player. Because I can tell you, when Inter Miami acquired Messi, it changed everything. And our data supports that. And I also know the ticket manager for Inter Miami, and he told me it was a madhouse literally the day after it happened. But what we're going to do is we're going to focus on the three ways that we can grow our fan base. And the first one is we're going to convince infrequent fans to become more frequent. How many of you have just been to one MLS game? By show of hands. None? You never been to a game live? How many of you have been to any sporting event live in the last year? Okay, thank God for that. So, but we're going to convince infrequent fans to become more frequent, because again, that helps you grow revenue. You get them to spend more money. We're going to determine what new offerings you can make available to fans to attract them. One thing is to create a better in-game experience for both live attendance and viewers. Because one of the things I hear more and more from, teams and leagues and people that have brands is that teams need to improve their in-game experience so that fans leave there, not just, that they've seen a good football match or a good hockey game or a good basketball game, but they feel good about the entertainment, the 2.5 hours they spent, the 3 hours, and the amount of money they may have spent in order to engage in that particular activity. Or if you're streaming and you buy a lot of streaming services, you know what, like me, I want to make sure I'm getting my money's worth out of those streaming services. So I, again, am looking at the fan experience, even from watching a game either via TV or traditional TV or streaming. So again, create that better in-game experience. And then the last one is that tough one, stealing fans from other teams in the market. But it's the same process, though. It's identify, understand, create a strategy. Because again, understanding, but it's not, I will tell you, in sports, it's actually not as hard as it is, let's just say, in the real world. Not that sports isn't the real world. But, if you're a sports fan, you might be more amenable to going to a soccer match if you're, let's say, a hockey fan. Or if you're even a basketball fan, you might be more amenable. Football fans, same thing. So the idea is that sports fans tend to be a little bit more amenable to other sports. Now, I talked a little bit about process, and this is kind of my last process discussion. I love to use the storyboard. I actually have a whole bunch of these printed out that are blank. And what I like to do with a storyboard is I want to think through what it is I want to talk about, what it is I think is important. So my storyboard starts off with understanding my current fan base. Well, we're going to focus tonight on DC United, and we're going to focus on their fan base. We're going to focus on live attendance at games, And then we're going to focus on streaming and traditional viewing habits. And we're going to then look at them and we're going to compare them to other teams and we're going to compare them to other teams in the market. But is your fan base growing or going one way or the other? We're going to look at that. We're going to look at the positives and the negatives, attendance, viewership, merchandise, gambling. But you know what? That's where the SWOT analysis comes in. You know, you can do your SWOT analysis, your strengths. What are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? What are my opportunities? What are my threats? How well are the other teams in the area doing in terms of fan growth? You know, if the Washington Capitals are growing and I'm not, you know what? I might want to try to understand that a little bit more. You know, what are the differences in terms of demographics? You know, and then you can get into things like ticket prices and concession prices, and there's a lot of things that go into the way the matrix or the funnel, so to speak. Identify which teams present the best opportunity to try and steal or convert fans to your team or sport. And then last, how can you best reach these potential fans? Traditional media, TV, streaming, or social? Now, question. How many of you watch sporting events on traditional TV, cable, or satellite? I have to raise my hand on that. Okay, so approximately what? We've got about 5, I think I'm counting. How many of you watch your sports via streaming? I do both. Looks like streaming outdoes traditional TV viewing by 2 to 1. Would you say that's kind of accurate? Did I read the room well?
Yep.
Cool. So let's start looking at now data. What I'm going to do now is first I'm going to bring over my website, I hope. Whoops, that got a little too big. Yes, and we are seeing it. Wow, I did it right. Well, now it's too small.
You can go into the blue and actually,
Is it okay?
yeah, that might actually be bigger and better.
How's
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, use
Okay.
use the whole thing.
Well, I don't want to necessarily, I don't want to, all right, I can use the whole screen
If it-
if you want. I just think sometimes it's a little too wide. Okay, I can see that.
Go with that.
Yeah, we'll go with that. Actually, I can't go with that because I can't see something. Mhm. Okay, that works. So this is the site, SBRnet. You access the site via the school's library. No one needs a username. No one needs a password. The school has access via the library. We use this kind of funky authentication system, but it allows you to be able to access the data. So everyone in the room right now has access to the data. Now, given the situation about the specific projects that you're going to be working on, I am going to advise you to go right over here into what we call our premium section. Our premium section actually delivers the data both at the league level as well as the team level. So if you want to understand what's going on at the league level, these are all reports that have been pre-formatted in Excel, which I've done a little bit of the work for you, starting at 2017. Now, some of the sports don't go all the way back because we weren't measuring those sports that far back. An example would be Formula One, but Formula One isn't going to get used in this discussion anyway. But again, we deliver the data to you in a variety of ways. But the data you are going to use is going to be down here in the premium fan extracts team by team. Because down here is where you're literally going to be able to grab data specific to DC United. Oops, that was like something fell in my house. So again, it's going to be so again, premium right there, slide down to team by team, and here's all the data. If you're going to be focusing, if you're doing MLS, you're going to focus on MLS. If you're doing the NHL, if you're doing the Rangers, you're going to use hockey. I mean, it's kind of self-explanatory. But now I want to go back to the PowerPoint for a minute. Good. So what I've done is I've actually grabbed some data and I've started the process a little bit. So what are we looking at right now on the screen? I guess I'm going to have to make this bigger too, aren't I, Professor?
You guys see it?
Let's go full. That help? That's big as I can make it.
I'm seeing thumbs up.
Okay, cool. So what we're looking at here are DC United fan attendance and viewing habits. Now, if you would have stretched this whole thing out, you would have seen every MLS team. But what I did was I highlighted DC United specifically in yellow so you can see. Now, a couple of things. Number one, all whole numbers are expressed in thousands, which means you add 3 zeros onto all of these numbers. So for instance, DC United has 2.34 million fans. Columbus has 1.345 million fans. Colorado has a paltry 548,000 fans. So remember, don't, I've been in a few presentations where they forgot about the 3 zeros and they've completely gotten the numbers wrong. Make sure that you're representing the data properly. Remember, all data is expressed in thousands. All percentages are expressed exactly the same way. Now, in a lot of cases, we have what they call vertical percent. So percent, in this case, we would see if it said vertical percent, you would see, whoops, my bad. You would see what percent or what volume of DC United fans, or how does that rate along the entire MLS spectrum? Now, I can tell you that I like to work vertically more than anything. I do not think the horizontal numbers really help that much. So as an example, we know that there are 2.34 million DC United fans, of which only 79,000 attended a game, at least one. Or that number represents 3.4% of the total fan base. So 3.4%. But look at the Columbus Crew right there, 8.8%. Look at Cincinnati, 28.8%. Look at Colorado, 27 points. They have a lot less fans, but they can get a lot more fans to come out to the games. Why can't we get more DC United fans to the game? What would happen if we got more fans coming out to the game? Anybody? It's a simple answer. We grow. We grow revenue. We grow our fan base. So again, it gives you the opportunity to be able to understand exactly, where you are at any given time. Here's an interesting number. DC United has 2.3 million fans. Every one of them have watched at least one game via streaming or traditional TV. And then you can see, who are the people that are watching a little bit, who are the people that are watching a lot. DC United does pretty good, actually, when it comes to, the percent of fans. 28% of their fans watch 2 to 4 games a year. Some of the teams, Colorado, almost 45%. So again, you have the ability to understand where are the strengths, where are the weaknesses, where are the opportunities, and then where are the threats. So again, this data comes directly from that special team by team extract data. It's under fans attended or watched. I'm going to bring the data up in a minute. Now, I pulled up some I pulled up some merch. Remember I talked about growing your fan base, adding new products, adding new things. So this is merch sales for MLS. Remember, DC United, 2.34 million fans. But what do I want to look at here? I want to look at the number of people that are buying licensed merch. And here's an interesting number. Remember, Julia, we talked about strengths and weaknesses and opportunities and threats. Now, weaknesses can turn into opportunities. And here's a perfect example. 80, whoops. 88.3% of DC United fans spent $0, $0 on licensed merch, $0. The Columbus Crew, lot smaller base, a lot, 77% spent zero. So here you're getting a look at exactly what's going on. But now when you go down here and look at the average spend per buyer or average spend per fan who bought something, what's interesting is that the amount is actually among the highest in the league, with the only one higher would be the Austin Football Club. But that can mean one of three things. Julia, since you're sitting in front of me, love that green sweater. What might it be telling you if the team's numbers are way higher than pretty much every other team in the MLS when it comes to licensed merch sales?
So I guess that each fan is spending more money compared to the
Well,
other.
they are, but you know what the problem might be? The problem might be their selection. They may not have a great selection of licensed merch to offer their customers. So it's a kind of a, go expensive or don't go at all. So maybe, the recommendation might be to DC United, in the store, at the arena, what does your product selection look like? What does your merchandising look like? Because you know what? Some of these teams are doing a much better job of merchandising. The number that would be good would be a combination of having a high number of people that spent $50 or more. In this case, 8.3% of DC United fans. Look at that, though. 15% of Columbus Crew fans. Colorado Rapids not doing a great job either. The Fire fans, 10.6. Charlotte, 11.7. So the idea is to get existing fans to buy more. Now, what I'd like to do is to show you a little bit about what that data looks like. I think I said I was going to go to 8 o'clock, right? Right, Professor Doug?
Think so, but you need a couple extra minutes to get through it. It's okay.
That's cool. So the data that we're looking at comes from what you're seeing on the screen right now. This is the way the data, remember I said it's all pre-formatted in Excel? This is it. This data has already been put into Excel, done it for you. So when you start looking and pulling out data points and bullets, the data's already there. You don't have to rerun it. Okay, it's already there. And you have the ability to look at all of these different data points. Now, here's something interesting. We got to make this huge. Give me a second. I'll make this like 200%. Remember I told you early on, 65 separate categories of data? Look, they're all right here. We get their social media engagement. We get games that they stream. What channels are they streaming on? I literally can tell you what services DC United fans are streaming on. So literally, you have the ability to understand as much about the fan as you can possibly look at. But what's important is to pull out only that data that you think is relevant, because there's a lot of data to pull out, believe me. License, merch, spending on licensed merch, cross fandom, looking at what other teams, MLS, those DC United fans, sports gambling, and the percentage of people that are, online sports gambling, sports tourism. You know what? A lot of you might end up in sports tourism as, a potential job opportunity. And then we get into some specific brands, information, everything from energy drinks to quick service restaurants. We don't call it fast food anymore because we're not supposed to. So again, the data that we showed you comes directly from the SBRnet site. And this is what the data looks like. Now, remember one of the things we talked about. We talked a little bit about the next part, looking at other teams in our area. So what I did was I pulled one out of my hat. I said, hey, let's look at the Washington Capitals. You know what's interesting? And you're going to see in a minute that the Washington Capitals actually have almost the exact same number of fans as DC United. I was blown away by that. And in fact, that's the Washington Capitals have won the Stanley Cup multiple times. The Washington Capitals have been in the area. God, I can't even. Let's try to. Do I need to make this? Let's go full screen here. Is that a little better?
A little
But
bit.
again, we talked about stealing fans from another team. So what did I do? I looked at the Capitals. But you could have looked, you could have looked anywhere. You could have looked at the Redskins. You could have looked at any of the college teams. You could have looked really anywhere. Now, one caveat, I do not have any data on George Washington athletics. Reason is, it's just too small. If it gets too small, the sample is too small. And if the sample's too small, the data integrity is gone. And if the data integrity is gone, it's no use to you or me. So we want to make sure that we always, using data that offers up enough sample. But remember I said you want to steal, we talked about, from another team. So maybe go look at the Washington Capitals and look at their fans. Because what I actually did was I put them together. DC United, remember, has 2.34 million fans. Well, guess what? The Capitals coincidentally have 2.379, or let's call it 2.38 million fans. Pretty close. Pretty close. But again, as we start looking at different categories, and in this case, I looked at age, because I wanted to see how the age broke down, for the teams. Now, in this case, I did not have enough sample for 13 to 17-year-olds for the Washington Capitals, whereas I did for DC United. So again, a little bit harder. But again, if you look at 18 to 34-year-olds, 32.4% of DC United fans are 18 to 34, whereas 25.7%. So what this is telling me is that the Capitals have an older fan base. And the DC United has a younger fan base. Now, if you have a younger fan base, you're probably going to want to market them a little bit differently. How would you market to a younger fan base, let's say, to attract new fans? I forgot the gentleman's name is sitting to the right of Julia with the hoodie on. Yeah, you forgot your first name.
Ahmad.
Ahmad, what would you do knowing that your fan base tends to be a little bit younger? What would you do? What media would you select in order to try to draw them in and to draw in more fans?
Digital media, like social media.
You're right. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Because here, I'm going to bring this data back over here for a minute. Well, at least I thought I was. Hang on. Actually, let me do this. Let me get out of this. Let me move this here. Let me bring this over here. Because again, we're looking at Capitals fans. We know where they are in terms of age, but we could also look at their social media habits and behaviors. And we can understand exactly hang on. Of course, I didn't get to where I wanted to. What else is new? Which social media platforms I would use in order to try to target those fans to turn them into fans of DC United. Because just like you said, sorry, I got your name wrong. Just like you said, digital media most likely would be more effective. So again, the data allows you to go in a number of different ways. The data really tells you where you should be going in terms of how you should be approaching things. The data really is there to help you tell a story. So it's not about showing a lot of data to people. It's all about picking the right data points. and we picked them. We looked at attendance. We looked at viewership habits. We looked at social media. Just those 3 categories alone, you can tell your story about how you can grow fans, whether it's DC United, the New York Rangers, although the New York Rangers, I'm not sure they, you're not going to grow attendance. I think the Madison Square Garden, I think there's like a 20-year waiting list for season tickets for the Rangers. But, so you're not going to be able to grow it that way. But you might be able to grow it via streaming. I don't know what their numbers look like. Again, I'm not a Rangers fan. I am a Panther fan, also a Flyers fan. But again, pick those data points that are important. And what I said, look at viewing, look at attendance, look at demographics, look at social media. Just those 4 categories that I just mentioned just gave you a story. Just gave you a story about how you're able to grow. Remember how you grow. How you grow fans. You provide more products, you provide, more for them to buy, whether it's going to more live games, watching more on TV. You add new products to the mix, licensed merch. If you don't have a good licensed merch selection, guess what? Then they're not going to buy. And by the way, we do have licensed merch, broken down by individual items. So hats and shirts and all the different things. Viewership habits, you saw that. Streaming, gambling. Pick out what data points you feel are important and use those data points to tell your story. Hey, before I go and before I ask for some questions, I'd love it if you followed us on social media. We're on LinkedIn, we're on Instagram, I still call it Twitter because I can't seem to call it X because X seems stupid to me. Stupid branding. What can I tell you? So again, follow us on social media. We'd love to hear from you. We're always posting great videos about certain, data and things like that. We've got an amazing podcast, by the way, on our website called My First Job in Sports. If you're thinking about a job in sports, the best way to find out how to get that job is to learn from those that already have one. And by the way, I've interviewed a couple of George Washington students in the 26 episodes of the show that we've done. You can either watch them, because we do record them video, or listen to them. And you can get it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all the major podcast networks. So again, I want to thank Professor Doug for inviting me into class. He's just one of those guys I can never say no to. And I never will say no to. Are there any questions? None? All right. Hi, what's your first name?
Juan. So Mexican.
Juan, how are you?
Good, good. How are you?
Good. What's your question?
So about the data, I was just curious, like, how often do you come up with a new one? Like, is it 2024 available? So I know at least for the MLS, a lot of the streaming changed. It's all happening through Apple TV now.
Yeah, we actually do the data once a year. And in fact, the latest study is actually in the field right now. And actually, truth be told, I'm really anxious to get that data because there's a bunch of things in the MLS that have occurred that I really want to start reporting on. I made a funny thing is everybody has always told me over the years, don't make predictions. I just can't help myself. So when Messi came to Inter Miami, I made a projection or a prediction about, what it was going to do for their fan base. And I'm looking to see if, in fact, I was right. But, again, we do it once a year. And again, it's a lot of data, a lot to look through, a lot to comb through. Thanks, Juan, for the question. Anyone else? Hey, what's up?
Hi, Neil. It's Alejandro here. My question was about how do you get that data? I mean, for example, if you wanna gather some data for international soccer, like what
Which I have.
software like you use for take this data and then place into your reports.
I think
So
more
no,
mechanics of it.
I'm
or
sorry.
Oh, I was trying to clarify that. You mean like the mechanics of it, or like who is that 6,666?
Yeah, maybe that the vendor or the provider of that data.
We actually use a company that owns what they call a panel. And it's a panel of respondents. Have any of you ever done, gotten like an email about participating in a survey of some sort for anything? I get them all the time. I can't answer them because I'm in the research business. But again, we use a nationally representative panel that is compiled by someone else. So we don't interview the same fans every year. Every year it's a different group of fans. But we always ensure that the data that we collect matches up to the United States based on age, income, ethnicity, geography, presence of children in the household, and then other related categories like that. So the data, again, once a year, comes from a nationally representative panel. Now, our international data, remember, we're looking at fans here in the United States of international teams. So if you want to know, who are the fans of Barcelona here in the United States, we've got that. Or you're interested in, English Premier League clubs, Man United, Man City, Tottenham. Tottenham's my personal favorite. But again, we've got that data, very detailed, gives you a lot of information. Any other questions? Cool.
Was there another one in the back?
Oh,
Had the same question, I guess. Cool. Well, Neil, thank you so much. Greatly appreciate it. And I think your examples were spot on for what they're going to be walking through. So I'm expecting lots of SBRnet references in their papers and presentations.
that's a good point also. Make sure that when you're using the data that you do refer to it or you do reference it. My favorite is I always like to reference everything in the bottom left-hand corner. And by the way, if you go on SBRnet, the site, and you look at about the methodology section, it will give you the proper way to cite the data, which is very important. I can't tell you how many times I've sat through presentations and the data never gets cited. It's always a good idea to make sure you let people know where your data comes from. Very important.
We have a whole
Thank
half
you,
hour.
everyone. Have a good rest of your evening. And Professor Doug, thank you again for inviting me into class.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.